Why were you born into this family? Not the loving, supportive one down the street, not the wealthy one with endless opportunities, but this specific collection of personalities, challenges, and circumstances that shaped your earliest years. Most of us assume family assignment is random, cosmic lottery tickets distributed by an indifferent universe. But according to Seth, the consciousness channeled through Jane Roberts in the 1960s and 70s, nothing could be further from the truth. Seth revealed something that challenges everything we believe about birth circumstances. Your soul deliberately selected your family before incarnation, not for comfort or ease, but for the precise growth opportunities those relationships would provide. That difficult parent who never understood you, that sibling rivalry that pushed you to your limits. These weren't accidents or punishments, they were carefully chosen educational experiences. Even more intriguing, Seth explained that family members aren't strangers thrown together by chance. They're souls you've known across multiple lifetimes, returning to resolve unfinished business and complete karmic lessons together. Understanding this selection process transforms everything about how we view our origins and relationships. The moment your soul departs this physical realm, something extraordinary happens that most spiritual traditions barely hint at. According to Seth, you don't simply float into some ethereal waiting room. Instead, you enter what he describes as the most profound planning session imaginable, a pre-birth council that operates on principles of consciousness most humans can't even fathom. Picture this: your soul, now free from the limitations of physical form, sits in conference with beings of such expanded awareness that their wisdom spans countless lifetimes across multiple dimensions. These aren't distant, judgmental deities. They're what Seth calls your inner teachers, aspects of consciousness that have been guiding your development through numerous incarnations, each one intimately familiar with every choice you've made, every lesson you've learned, and crucially, every opportunity for growth you've missed. The review process begins immediately. Your most recent lifetime gets examined with surgical precision, but not in the way most religions suggest. There's no cosmic scorecard of good versus evil. Instead, your council reviews your incarnation like master craftsmen studying a work in progress. They identify the moments when you broke through limiting beliefs, the relationships that catalyzed genuine transformation, and the experiences that expanded your capacity for love and understanding. But here's where it gets fascinating. They pay equal attention to what Seth calls your incomplete movements. Those situations where fear held you back, where you chose safety over growth, where you remained stuck in patterns that no longer served your evolution. These aren't failures to be punished. They're simply curriculum items that need to be addressed in your next incarnation. Your guides spread out before you what can only be described as a multi-dimensional map of possibilities. Each potential family represents a different educational pathway, complete with specific challenges, opportunities, and growth catalysts perfectly calibrated to address your soul's particular developmental needs. Seth reveals that souls consistently examine multiple family options, some that would provide relatively comfortable learning environments, others that would thrust you into accelerated growth through intense challenges. And here's what might surprise you: the soul almost invariably chooses the more challenging path, not because it enjoys suffering, but because it recognizes that profound growth requires moving beyond comfort zones. Your soul sees the complete spectrum of what each family choice would provide, the exact personality dynamics, the specific emotional wounds that would need healing, the particular strengths that would need developing. The planning extends far beyond just family relationships. Your council maps out potential geographical locations, each offering different cultural perspectives and life experiences. They identify specific talents to be developed, often carried over from previous lifetimes, but requiring new expression. They even examine potential physical challenges or limitations, understanding that what appears as disability from a human perspective often represents accelerated spiritual development from the soul's viewpoint. Seth shares examples of souls deliberately choosing bodies with physical limitations because these circumstances would force the development of inner resources that might otherwise remain dormant. A soul might select blindness to develop enhanced intuitive abilities, or choose a learning disability to cultivate patience and alternative forms of intelligence. These aren't cosmic punishments. They're advanced spiritual curricula chosen by souls ready for accelerated growth. The question of free will versus predetermination gets resolved in a way that's both elegant and empowering. Your soul and its council establish what Seth calls probability frameworks, core relationships and pivotal moments that will almost certainly occur, but with complete freedom in how you respond to these situations. Think of it like choosing to enroll in a university and selecting your major, but maintaining complete autonomy over how you engage with each class, assignment, and opportunity for learning. Some of the most profound aspects of this pre-birth planning process are too sensitive to discuss openly on platforms like YouTube, where content gets monitored and restricted. That's why we created our free Insights Academy newsletter, where subscribers receive exclusive access to deeper teachings that could fundamentally transform your understanding of spiritual law. For a limited time, new subscribers also receive a complimentary copy of the Kybalion, ancient wisdom that reveals the hidden principles governing consciousness itself. You can access these restricted teachings through the link in our description. Your soul's choice of family serves as the foundation for its entire earthly curriculum. Each family member represents a specific lesson or growth opportunity, though this operates on levels far more sophisticated than simple karmic payback. Your future mother might embody the exact combination of nurturing and challenge needed to develop your capacity for both receiving and giving love. Your father could represent the precise authority dynamic required to help you understand healthy boundaries and personal power. Siblings get chosen based on their ability to provide specific relational experiences. Perhaps one will challenge you to develop patience and compassion, while another will mirror back aspects of yourself that need integration. Even family pets are selected for their consciousness-expanding potential, offering lessons in unconditional love, responsibility, or dealing with loss. The Council examines generational patterns within potential families, understanding that certain genetic lineages carry both gifts and challenges that align with your soul's developmental needs. They might choose a family with a history of artistic talent if your soul needs to explore creative expression, or select a lineage with patterns of addiction if your spiritual curriculum requires learning about healing and transformation. What emerges from Seth's teachings is a picture of existence that's simultaneously more challenging and more hopeful than most spiritual philosophies suggest. More challenging because it means you actively participated in choosing every major circumstance of your life, including the difficult ones. More hopeful because it means every experience, no matter how painful, serves your highest growth and evolution. This pre-birth planning process makes every family dynamic meaningful and purposeful. That difficult relationship with your mother isn't cosmic coincidence. It's precisely what your soul determined would provide optimal conditions for developing specific aspects of your consciousness. The family trauma that shaped your childhood wasn't random bad luck. It was a carefully chosen catalyst designed to activate dormant strengths and push you toward breakthrough insights. Understanding this planning process completely reframes how we view family relationships and personal challenges. Instead of seeing ourselves as victims of circumstance, we begin recognizing ourselves as spiritual beings who chose these exact conditions for our highest development. This perspective doesn't minimize the reality of pain or struggle, but it places these experiences within a context of meaning and purpose that transforms everything. The moment you feel that inexplicable pull towards someone in your family, that sense of ancient familiarity or instant recognition, you're experiencing what Seth calls karmic threads. These aren't mystical fantasies. They're the invisible connections between souls who have chosen to dance together across multiple lifetimes, playing different roles in an elaborate spiritual drama designed for mutual growth. Here's where it gets mind-bending. The father who raised you in this lifetime might have been your son in a previous one. That difficult sister who pushes every button you have. She could have been your husband 3 centuries ago, and you're both back to work through the unresolved tensions that followed you beyond death. Seth reveals that souls rarely meet for the first time within a family structure. Instead, we're drawn back to the same cast of characters, lifetime after lifetime, switching roles like actors in an eternal theater production. Think about your most challenging family relationship for a moment. According to Seth's teachings, that person represents your most important spiritual assignment. The parent who abandoned you, the sibling who seemed to get all the attention, the child who breaks your heart with their choices. These aren't random cruelties inflicted by an uncaring universe. They're carefully orchestrated scenarios that your soul agreed to before birth, designed to teach you something essential about love, forgiveness, or compassion. Seth describes what he calls karmic knots, complex emotional entanglements between souls that can't be resolved in a single lifetime. These knots form when souls hurt each other deeply, create lasting trauma, or leave crucial business unfinished. A soul who betrayed their family's trust in one incarnation might choose to be born into circumstances where they experience abandonment firsthand. This isn't cosmic punishment, it's education. The soul needs to understand what betrayal feels like from the other side to develop genuine empathy and make different choices. Consider the case Seth presents of 2 souls locked in a pattern of power struggle. In one lifetime, Soul A might be the domineering patriarch who crushes his son's spirit through harsh criticism and impossible expectations. Soul B, playing the son, carries deep wounds of inadequacy and rage into death. Rather than avoiding each other in future lifetimes, these souls often choose to return together with reversed roles, Soul B becomes the critical parent, and Soul A experiences the receiving end of harsh judgment. But here's the crucial point. They're not trying to get even. They're trying to understand each other completely, to break the cycle by experiencing both sides of the dynamic. The concept of karmic debt operates differently than most people imagine. It's not a cosmic accounting system where souls are forced to pay back their misdeeds. Instead, it's a voluntary curriculum. Souls choose challenging family roles because they recognize what they need to learn. The cruel stepmother who made your childhood miserable might be a soul who was once your beloved grandmother, taking on the difficult role of your antagonist this time around, specifically because she loves you enough to help you develop strength and resilience. Some souls make even greater sacrifices, accepting difficult incarnations not for their own growth but as service to their family group. Seth describes souls who choose to be born into families struggling with generational trauma, addiction, or abuse patterns. These souls become catalysts, their very presence forcing long-buried issues to surface where they can finally be healed. The rebellious teenager who refuses to follow family traditions might be a soul whose mission is to break destructive patterns that have repeated for generations. This explains why certain family members feel impossible to understand or get along with, despite your best efforts. That relative who triggers you instantly, who seems to operate from a completely different value system, may be your most important teacher. They're challenging you to develop patience, to practice unconditional love, to learn forgiveness, not as a nice gesture, but as a spiritual necessity. The recognition factor runs deeper than physical genetics. When you meet someone and feel like you've known them forever, or when a family relationship feels ancient and layered from day one, you're remembering soul connections that span centuries. Seth explains that souls often travel in groups, what he calls entity families, returning together repeatedly to explore different aspects of relationship. The same group might incarnate as a traditional nuclear family in one lifetime, then return as friends and colleagues in another, always working on similar themes but from different angles. Understanding these karmic threads completely transforms how we view family conflicts. That bitter divorce your parents went through isn't just personal drama. It might be two souls finally completing a relationship pattern they've been working on for lifetimes. The sibling rivalry that defined your childhood could be souls learning to share power and attention in ways they failed to master in previous incarnations. Even the most painful family experiences become meaningful when viewed as spiritual curriculum rather than random suffering. Seth presents the example of souls who repeatedly incarnate together as parent and child, switching roles each time. In one lifetime, the soul learns nurturing and protection by being the parent. In the next, the same soul learns trust and receiving by being the child. Over many lifetimes, both souls master the complete spectrum of the parent-child dynamic, understanding it from every possible angle. The most liberating realization Seth offers is this: every difficult family relationship is actually a spiritual assignment you accepted before birth. You chose these challenges because your soul recognized them as exactly what you needed for growth. This doesn't mean you should tolerate abuse or maintain toxic relationships, but it does mean you can approach family difficulties with the understanding that there's profound purpose beneath the surface chaos. When you start viewing your family through the lens of karmic threads, everything changes. That impossible relative becomes your spiritual teacher. Those childhood wounds become your curriculum for developing strength. The family patterns that seemed like curses become the very experiences your soul chose to master the art of unconditional love. When you understand that your soul chose every detail of your incarnation during that pre-birth council we explored earlier, one relationship towers above all others in its profound significance: the bond with your mother. Seth reveals something that will fundamentally shift how you view this most primal connection. Your mother isn't just the woman who gave birth to you. She's your soul's primary gateway into physical existence, carefully selected to provide exactly the lessons your consciousness needs to evolve. This goes far beyond the biological miracle of conception and birth. Your mother represents your soul's first and most crucial earthly teacher, often embodying the deepest lessons about trust, acceptance, and what we call unconditional love. But here's where Seth's teachings become truly revolutionary. Souls don't choose their mothers based on who would provide the most comfortable or nurturing experience. They choose based on what they need to learn, even when, especially when, that learning comes through difficulty. Consider this profound example from Seth's work. A soul seeking to develop fierce independence might deliberately choose an overly protective, smothering mother. The friction created by this dynamic isn't cosmic cruelty, it's spiritual curriculum. Every time that soul pushes against the protective boundaries, every moment of rebellion against excessive care, they're developing the exact quality they came to Earth to cultivate. The mother, often unconsciously, plays her role perfectly in this soul-level agreement made long before conception. Similarly, a soul needing to learn genuine self-worth might select a mother who struggles to express love openly, someone emotionally distant or critical. This might sound harsh until you grasp the deeper mechanics at work. That soul isn't being punished. They're being trained in the most intensive way possible to develop an unshakable sense of inner value that doesn't depend on external validation. Where there's pain in the mother-child relationship, Seth teaches, there lies the deepest opportunity for spiritual growth. The mother's energy, emotional patterns, and level of spiritual development directly program the soul's foundational beliefs about love, safety, and belonging in this physical realm. She becomes the filter through which the newly incarnated consciousness first experiences earthly existence. Her fears become the soul's first obstacles to overcome. Her limitations become the boundaries the soul must learn to transcend. Her wounds often mirror the exact areas where the soul chose to focus its healing work. Some of the most challenging cases Seth describes involve souls choosing mothers who are emotionally unavailable, addicted, or even abusive. This isn't cosmic punishment or random misfortune. It's intensive spiritual training. These souls are developing inner strength, self-love, and the ability to create healthy boundaries under the most demanding circumstances possible. Think of it as advanced coursework for consciousness. Just as a medical student eventually needs to work with real patients rather than textbooks, some souls need extreme conditions to develop the spiritual muscles they came to build. The mother also represents each soul's relationship with the feminine principle itself: intuition, emotion, nurturing, and receptivity. How we relate to our mother often determines how we connect with our own intuitive abilities, our capacity for emotional depth, and our relationship with creativity and spiritual receptivity. Healing the mother wound frequently unlocks dormant creative and spiritual potential that's been buried under layers of early programming. Seth shares fascinating examples of souls choosing mothers who simply don't understand them, creating what appears to be fundamental incompatibility. A deeply spiritual soul might choose a materialistic mother, or an artistic soul might select someone who values only practical achievement. This apparent mismatch forces the development of inner knowing and spiritual independence. These souls learn early that their truth comes from within, not from external approval or understanding. In some of the most profound cases, highly evolved souls actually choose very young or unprepared mothers as a form of service. These advanced consciousnesses accelerate their mother's spiritual development through the intense challenges of parenting a soul whose needs they can barely comprehend. The mother grows rapidly through necessity, often awakening to spiritual realities she never would have discovered otherwise. The soul often experiences its first major spiritual test through the mother relationship, learning to love unconditionally even when that love isn't returned in expected ways. This becomes the template for all future relationships. A soul who masters unconditional love with a difficult mother has gained one of the most valuable spiritual skills possible. Understanding that your mother was chosen by your soul as the perfect teacher for your specific spiritual curriculum changes everything. However imperfect she may seem, however much pain the relationship may have caused, she provided exactly the learning environment your consciousness required. This doesn't mean accepting abuse or remaining in harmful dynamics. Sometimes the lesson is precisely about learning to create boundaries and choose healthier relationships. The healing potential becomes extraordinary when we grasp this deeper truth. Many people discover that transforming their relationship with their mother, even if she's no longer alive, catalyzes profound healing in all other relationships. The mother template runs so deep that clearing these patterns often unlocks stuck energy throughout the entire relationship sphere of life. If you're feeling resistance to these ideas about your mother relationship, that resistance itself might be pointing toward your soul's deepest growth edge. The places where we feel most triggered often indicate where our greatest spiritual work lies waiting. Every mother-child dynamic, regardless of how challenging or even traumatic it may have appeared, serves the soul's highest evolution. Your mother wasn't a mistake or a punishment. She was your soul's carefully chosen first teacher, perfectly designed to help you become who you came here to be. In our next section, we'll explore how this same conscious selection process extends to choosing your father and the unique lessons that relationship provides. If the mother serves as your soul's gateway to earth, the father represents something equally profound but entirely different. He's the compass that determines which direction your soul will take once you've arrived. According to Seth's teachings, this isn't just about having a male role model or learning traditional masculine traits. The father connection operates as your soul's primary training ground for understanding power, authority, and your relationship with the material world itself. Think about this for a moment. Every interaction you had with your father or his absence was teaching your soul fundamental lessons about how to navigate hierarchy, assert boundaries, and develop internal authority. When Seth describes the pre-birth planning process, he reveals that souls spend considerable time selecting fathers who will provide exactly the right kind of resistance, challenge, or support needed for specific spiritual development. This is where it gets fascinating. Your soul didn't randomly end up with your father. If you had an absent father, your soul specifically chose that experience to develop self-reliance and internal authority. If your father was harsh or critical, your soul selected that challenge to build resilience and, paradoxically, to develop deeper compassion. If your father was weak or passive, your soul chose that dynamic to inspire you to develop your own strength and leadership capabilities. These aren't accidents or cosmic mistakes. They're precisely calibrated spiritual education programs. Seth explains that many souls who agree to play the role of difficult fathers are actually making tremendous sacrifices for their child's spiritual development. They sometimes accept lifetimes where they'll be misunderstood, resented, or rejected. Also, their child's soul can develop specific spiritual muscles that couldn't be built any other way. Consider the father, who's emotionally unavailable. From a human perspective, this creates pain and longing. But from the soul's perspective, this experience teaches invaluable lessons about finding validation from within, developing emotional independence, and learning to trust your own judgment rather than constantly seeking external approval. The soul learns to become its own authority figure, or take the overly controlling father. While this creates obvious challenges, it also teaches the soul crucial lessons about healthy rebellion, boundary setting, and distinguishing between legitimate guidance and mere power plays. Many souls who experienced controlling fathers develop exceptional abilities to recognize and resist manipulation in all its forms, skills that serve them throughout their lifetime. Seth's teachings reveals something even more profound. The father relationship directly impacts your soul's ability to navigate the material world. Career success, financial abundance, and professional achievement are all connected to how well you've integrated the lessons your father was meant to teach. This is why healing father wounds often unlock sudden breakthroughs in business, money, and external accomplishment. The father represents your soul's relationship with divine masculine energy, not gender-specific traits, but the universal principles of protection, provision, and purposeful action. When you heal your relationship with your father, you're actually healing your relationship with these fundamental forces. You begin to understand the difference between authentic strength and mere dominance, between true authority and simple control. Here's where Seth's insights become particularly illuminating. Many souls deliberately choose fathers from different backgrounds, belief systems, or spiritual development levels. Why? To learn tolerance, bridge building, and the ability to find common ground across differences. If you grew up feeling like you and your father were from different worlds, your soul may have specifically chosen that dynamic to develop skills in communication, understanding, and finding unity despite apparent differences. Some souls choose fathers who represent everything they don't want to become. This isn't punishment, it's education. By experiencing what doesn't resonate, the soul develops clearer discernment about its own authentic path. The father who's addicted, irresponsible, or selfish provides the soul with vivid examples of choices to avoid while simultaneously developing compassion for human struggles and weaknesses. The most challenging teaching Seth offers about fathers is this: even the worst father serves as a perfect teacher for his child's soul. The father who abandons his family may be teaching his child's soul about self-sufficiency and inner strength. The father who's abusive may be providing the exact catalyst needed for his child to develop fierce protective instincts and an unshakable commitment to breaking generational patterns. This doesn't excuse harmful behavior or suggest we should be grateful for abuse. Rather, it offers a framework for understanding how our souls can extract wisdom and strength from even the most difficult circumstances. When we recognize our father as a fellow soul who accepted a specific role in our spiritual education, often at great personal cost to his own reputation or happiness, profound healing becomes possible. The father relationship also teaches us about external structure and internal authority. Through our interactions with paternal energy, we learn how to navigate hierarchies in the workplace, assert ourselves appropriately in relationships, and develop personal strength without becoming domineering. These lessons ripple out into every area of adult life. Seth explains that transforming your relationship with authority figures almost always begins with healing your father relationship. When you can see your father as neither a hero nor a villain, but as a soul who played a specific role in your development, you begin to relate to all authority figures with greater wisdom and less reactivity. Whether your father was present or absent, supportive or challenging, strong or weak, he provided your soul with exactly the experiences needed for its current lifetime of growth. Understanding this doesn't require forgiveness in the traditional sense. It requires recognition of the deeper spiritual dynamics at play. Every father, regardless of his apparent limitations or failures, serves as your soul's teacher about power, authority, and masculine spiritual energy. When you begin to see your father through this lens, you unlock not just healing, but a profound understanding of your own spiritual journey and the perfect education your soul designed for itself. Now we come to one of Seth's most profound and challenging teachings about family selection, the concept of transformer souls. These are the spiritual warriors who deliberately choose to incarnate into the most troubled family systems, not for their own growth, but as agents of radical healing and change. Picture this: some of the most spiritually advanced souls in existence look down at Earth and specifically seek out families trapped in cycles of abuse, addiction, trauma, or dysfunction. They volunteer for what amounts to a spiritual suicide mission, knowing they'll likely face rejection, misunderstanding, and harsh treatment from the very people they've come to help. Why would they do this? Because they carry enough spiritual strength and awareness to interrupt generational patterns that might otherwise continue for centuries. These transformer souls often sense from early childhood that something is fundamentally different about them. While their siblings might naturally fall into family patterns of behavior, values, and thinking, the transformer feels like they're speaking a different language entirely. They might be the only one in an alcoholic family who refuses to drink, the only one in an abusive household who says this isn't normal, or the only one in a family of people pleasers who sets firm boundaries. Seth explains that this isn't coincidence or rebellion, it's mission fulfillment. These souls incarnate carrying what he calls pattern interruption energy. Their very presence in the family system creates friction because their higher vibrational frequency naturally disrupts established dysfunction. They're like spiritual antibodies entering a disease system. And just as the body initially fights antibodies, families often fight their transformer members. The loneliness these souls experience is profound. Imagine being a child who instinctively knows that your family's normal is actually deeply unhealthy, but having no framework to understand why you feel so different. You might think something is wrong with you because your natural responses, setting boundaries, refusing to participate in family drama, or speaking uncomfortable truths, consistently trigger conflict and rejection. What makes this even more challenging is that transformer souls often become the family scapegoat. They're labeled the difficult one, the black sheep, or the problem child, precisely because their presence illuminates what everyone else wants to keep hidden. When a transformer soul refuses to enable an alcoholic parent, they might be accused of being unsupportive. When they won't participate in gossip or family triangulation, they're called stuck up or thinking they're better than everyone else. But here's what Seth reveals. These souls aren't being difficult. They're following their pre-birth programming. Before incarnating, they agreed to serve as what he calls spiritual lightning rods, drawing family dysfunction toward themselves so it can be consciously processed and healed rather than unconsciously passed to the next generation. They sacrifice their own comfort and acceptance to serve the family's spiritual evolution. Consider Sarah, who grew up in a family where emotional manipulation was the primary form of communication. While her siblings learned to navigate through guilt, shame, and passive aggression, Sarah consistently responded with direct, honest communication. Her family couldn't understand why she always had to make things so complicated when she refused to play their emotional games. What they didn't realize was that Sarah's soul had specifically chosen this family to demonstrate that healthier communication patterns were possible. The transformer role often manifests in seemingly rebellious behavior that's actually spiritually guided. These souls might choose career paths their families don't understand, relocate far from home, or openly challenge family secrets and traditions. They're not trying to hurt anyone. They're trying to create cracks in the family's rigid patterns so light can get in. Seth describes transformer souls as generational circuit breakers. Just as an electrical circuit breaker prevents dangerous overloads by interrupting the current, these souls prevent dangerous patterns from continuing by interrupting the generational flow of dysfunction. They might be the first in their family line to seek therapy, practice healthy relationships, or break cycles of financial dysfunction. The spiritual courage required for this mission is extraordinary. These souls know before incarnating that they'll likely spend years feeling misunderstood, rejected, or even ostracized by their chosen families. They accept this because they understand they're not just healing their immediate family, they're healing their entire ancestral line, both backwards and forwards in time. Many transformer souls experience a profound shift when they finally understand their true spiritual role. The years of feeling wrong or different suddenly make sense. They realize their sensitivity wasn't weakness but strength. Their boundary setting wasn't selfishness but service. And their refusal to participate in family dysfunction wasn't rebellion but spiritual mission fulfillment. This understanding often leads transformer souls toward healing professions in their adult lives. Having experienced family dysfunction firsthand and learned to navigate it consciously, they become natural therapists, counselors, coaches, or teachers. Their childhood experiences, which seemed like punishment at the time, reveal themselves as intensive training for helping others break their own generational patterns. The ripple effects of one transformer soul's work can be extraordinary. By refusing to pass on inherited trauma, addiction patterns, or dysfunctional relationship models, they create entirely new possibilities for future generations. Children and grandchildren who might have otherwise inherited generations of pain instead inherit the gift of healthier patterns and conscious awareness. Seth emphasizes that recognizing and embracing the transformer role is crucial for these souls to complete their mission with greater ease and less personal suffering. When they understand they're not broken family members but spiritual healers in disguise, they can approach their family relationships with compassion rather than resentment, knowing that even rejection serves the larger healing purpose. If you recognize yourself as a transformer soul, honor the profound courage it took to accept this mission and trust that your differentness is your greatest gift to your family lineage. You know how sometimes you meet someone for the first time and there's this instant recognition, like you've known them forever, even though you're complete strangers? Seth explains this isn't coincidence, it's vibrational resonance. And this same magnetic force that draws certain people into our lives operates on a much grander scale when souls select their families before birth. Think of your soul as a tuning fork, vibrating at a very specific frequency based on your accumulated experiences, unresolved patterns, and spiritual development across multiple lifetimes. When it's time to incarnate, your soul doesn't randomly land in any available family. Instead, it's magnetically drawn to the family unit whose collective vibration creates the perfect resonance chamber for your growth. This isn't some mystical mumbo-jumbo. Seth describes it as precisely as a radio finding its station. If your soul is vibrating with themes of abandonment and trust issues from previous lives, you'll be irresistibly attracted to a family where those exact patterns are playing out. Maybe it's a father who's emotionally unavailable, or a mother struggling with her own abandonment wounds. The family becomes your spiritual gymnasium, equipped with exactly the right equipment to strengthen the muscles your soul needs to develop. But here's where it gets really fascinating. Seth explains that souls carrying heavy, chaotic energy from past incarnations will naturally gravitate toward chaotic family environments. I'm talking about families with addiction, violence, financial instability, or emotional volatility. To the human mind, this seems cruel or random, but from the soul's perspective, it's perfect engineering. That chaotic external environment mirrors the internal chaos the soul needs to process and ultimately transcend. On the flip side, souls who've cultivated love, compassion, and emotional stability through multiple lifetimes find themselves drawn to families that reflect those qualities. They incarnate into homes filled with support, encouragement, and healthy communication patterns. It's not luck or divine favoritism, it's vibrational matching at work. The geographic location where you're born, also part of this vibrational blueprint. A soul needing to learn patience and acceptance might choose to incarnate in a culture where those qualities are deeply valued and practiced. Someone requiring lessons in individual expression and breaking free from collective thinking might be drawn to societies that celebrate independence and personal achievement. Even socio-economic circumstances serve this vibrational matching process. Seth taught that poverty isn't punishment, it's curriculum. A soul born into financial struggle might be learning profound lessons about resourcefulness, gratitude for simple pleasures, or non-attachment to material wealth. These aren't consolation prizes. They're advanced spiritual courses that can accelerate soul development in ways that comfort never could. Conversely, souls incarnating into wealthy families aren't getting a free pass. They're signing up for equally challenging lessons about responsibility, the spiritual dangers of privilege, and learning to use abundance as a tool for service rather than self-indulgence. The external circumstances perfectly match what each soul needs to learn. This vibrational matching explains something that puzzles many people: why adopted children often end up in families that provide remarkably similar spiritual lessons to what they would have received with their biological parents. The adoptive family isn't a backup plan. They're vibrationally aligned to offer the same growth opportunities the soul originally selected. But here's something Seth emphasized that most people miss. Your soul's vibration isn't static. It continues evolving throughout your lifetime. As you work through certain patterns and integrate new understanding, your vibration shifts. This is why family dynamics can change dramatically over time. Different aspects of your soul's nature become activated, creating new resonances and sometimes disrupting old patterns. This vibrational evolution also explains why family conflicts often intensify during periods of spiritual growth. When one family member begins operating at a significantly different vibrational frequency, maybe through therapy, spiritual practice, or life experiences, it can create tension with others who are still vibrating at the old frequency. The conflict isn't personal, it's energetic, and it serves everyone's growth by forcing them to either raise their vibration or consciously choose to remain where they are. Sometimes souls deliberately incarnate into families vibrating slightly above their current level, allowing them to be naturally uplifted by the higher frequency environment. Other times, more developed souls choose families operating below their level, serving as catalysts to raise the entire family system's vibration. These souls often feel like the black sheep or the one who's always pushing boundaries and challenging family traditions. The timing of your birth, your position in the birth order, even the specific circumstances surrounding your conception and delivery, all of this flows from your soul's vibrational signature at the moment of incarnation. A soul needing to learn leadership might choose to be the firstborn. One requiring lessons in cooperation and sharing might select the middle child position. The youngest might be a soul learning to receive nurturing, or one whose job is to keep the family's heart open through playfulness and joy. Understanding this vibrational matching process is incredibly empowering because it reframes every aspect of your family experience. Your parents' limitations aren't cosmic mistakes. They're precisely calibrated to activate specific growth in your soul. Your siblings' personalities aren't random. They're perfectly designed to trigger your development in areas where you need strengthening. This means you can stop seeing yourself as a victim of your family's circumstances and start recognizing yourself as the conscious architect who selected this exact configuration for your spiritual advancement. When you truly grasp that your soul's vibration at birth determined not just which family you joined, but every detail of that family's composition and dynamics, you begin to see your life story as a masterpiece of spiritual engineering rather than a series of random events. And here's the beautiful part. As you do conscious spiritual work and raise your vibration, you literally transform your family relationships from the inside out. You're not just healing yourself, you're shifting the entire family system toward higher frequencies of love, understanding, and authentic connection. Among all the soul choices Seth describes, perhaps none requires greater spiritual maturity than the path of the service soul. These are beings who have reached such an advanced level of consciousness that they willingly incarnate into challenging family situations not for their own growth, but specifically to heal and elevate others. It's a profound act of selflessness that most of us can barely comprehend. Picture this, a soul who has already mastered many of life's lessons, who could easily choose a comfortable incarnation with loving, supportive parents and abundant resources. Instead, they deliberately select a family struggling with addiction, mental illness, or deep generational trauma. Why? Because they possess the spiritual strength to serve as a stabilizing force that can transform everyone around them. These service souls often arrive with remarkable gifts that seem almost out of place in their chosen families. They might be born with unusual sensitivity, natural healing abilities, or profound spiritual insight that they quietly use to shift family dynamics from within. What's fascinating is how they naturally gravitate toward roles that support others. They become the family caretakers, the mediators, the emotional stabilizers who somehow keep everything from falling apart. I've observed countless examples of this phenomenon. There's the daughter born into a family ravaged by alcoholism, who becomes the one everyone turns to for emotional support, even as a child. She intuitively knows how to de-escalate conflicts, when to offer comfort, and how to maintain hope when everything seems hopeless. Or consider the son born to parents struggling with severe depression, who somehow radiates an inner light that gradually lifts the entire household's energy over time. What makes service souls particularly remarkable is their capacity to absorb and transmute emotional pain. They function like spiritual sponges, naturally drawing family trauma into themselves and somehow processing it in ways that lighten the load for everyone else. This isn't always conscious. Many service souls don't fully understand why they feel so responsible for family harmony, or why they seem to carry emotional burdens that aren't technically theirs. The challenge for these souls is immense. They often develop such strong empathic abilities that maintaining their own emotional boundaries becomes nearly impossible. They feel their mother's anxiety as if it were their own, absorb their father's anger, and somehow find ways to neutralize sibling conflicts before they escalate. The personal cost can be devastating, yet they persist because their mission runs deeper than self-preservation. Service souls frequently become the family bridges, the ones who maintain connections across generations, who remember everyone's birthdays, who organize gatherings and ensure no one gets left behind. They're often the ones siblings call when they need advice, the ones parents confide in during crises, and the ones extended family members trust to keep everyone informed and connected. What's particularly poignant is how these contributions often go unrecognized. Family members unconsciously rely on the service soul's emotional support and spiritual strength, while taking their presence completely for granted. The service soul becomes like oxygen, absolutely essential but invisible until suddenly absent. This lack of appreciation can create profound loneliness and frustration for these individuals, who may spend decades wondering why they feel so different from everyone around them. Seth emphasizes that service souls aren't meant to sacrifice themselves completely. Their true purpose involves modeling healthy service that inspires others to develop their own capacity for love and healing. When a service soul martyrs themselves entirely, they actually undermine their mission by enabling family members to remain spiritually dependent rather than growing into their own power. The guilt these souls experience around self-care is often overwhelming. They incarnate with such a strong drive to help others that prioritizing their own needs feels almost like betrayal. Learning to maintain healthy boundaries while still fulfilling their service mission becomes one of their greatest challenges. Many service souls require multiple lifetimes to master this delicate balance. Recognizing the service soul role can be profoundly validating for individuals who have always felt inexplicably responsible for family harmony. It explains why they've been natural healers from childhood, why they instinctively know how to comfort others, and why they feel energetically drained after family gatherings. Understanding their chosen mission helps them appreciate their contributions while learning to protect their own spiritual well-being. These souls often extend their healing work beyond their immediate families, becoming professional therapists, counselors, social workers, or alternative healers. Their childhood experience navigating complex family dynamics provides invaluable training for helping others heal their own relational wounds. They understand trauma from the inside out and possess hard-won wisdom about transformation that purely academic training cannot provide. The ripple effects of service soul work extend far beyond what's immediately visible. By gradually raising the spiritual vibration of their family systems, these souls create positive changes that echo through generations. Children growing up in families touched by service soul energy learn healthier emotional patterns, develop greater empathy, and often become healers themselves. If you recognize yourself as a service soul, remember that your mission includes honoring your own needs and maintaining your spiritual vitality. Your greatest gift to your family isn't endless self-sacrifice, but demonstrating how to love powerfully while staying centered in your own truth. The world needs your healing presence, but it needs you whole and healthy to be most effective. Service souls represent some of the most courageous beings incarnating on Earth today. They choose the hardest path, loving difficult people, healing generational wounds, and transforming family systems from within, often receiving little recognition for their extraordinary spiritual service. Yet their impact on human consciousness continues expanding in ways that touch countless lives across time. There's a moment in every person's spiritual journey when everything shifts. It's the moment when you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" This isn't just positive thinking or spiritual bypassing. It's the fundamental awakening that Seth describes as humanity's most important evolutionary leap. When you truly understand that your soul consciously chose your family circumstances, something profound happens in your psyche. The victim identity that may have defined you for decades simply dissolves. Not because you're denying your pain or minimizing your experiences, but because you're finally seeing the bigger picture that your soul has always known. I've witnessed this transformation in countless people, and it's always breathtaking. A woman who spent 40 years resenting her alcoholic father suddenly realizes her soul chose that experience to develop unprecedented compassion and strength. A man who felt abandoned by his emotionally distant mother understands that his soul needed to learn self-reliance and inner nurturing. The shift isn't about excusing harmful behavior. It's about reclaiming your power from the story that you're a helpless victim of circumstances. This awakening immediately transforms how you move through the world. Instead of carrying the heavy energy of resentment and blame, you begin operating from curiosity and purpose. You start seeing your family members not as the sources of your problems, but as fellow souls who agreed to play specific roles in your spiritual education. Your difficult sister isn't just being controlling, she's providing you with opportunities to practice boundaries. Your critical parent isn't just being mean, they're helping you develop inner validation and self-worth. Now, I need to address something crucial here. Understanding soul choice doesn't mean becoming a doormat or staying in abusive situations. This is where many people get confused about Seth's teachings. Recognizing that your soul-chosen experience doesn't mean you have to endure ongoing harm. In fact, part of your soul's curriculum might be learning to protect yourself, set boundaries, or remove yourself from toxic dynamics. The spiritual lesson could be developing the strength to say no, the wisdom to recognize manipulation, or the courage to break generational patterns. When someone who experienced severe childhood trauma first encounters this teaching, the resistance can be intense. How could a loving soul choose abuse? How could there be any purpose in such suffering? This is where Seth's wisdom becomes most profound. He explains that some souls, particularly the advanced ones we discussed as service souls, take on extremely challenging experiences, not just for their own growth, but to break cycles of pain that have persisted through generations. If you're struggling with this concept, approach it gently. You don't have to accept it all at once. Start with smaller family challenges, the annoying habits, the personality clashes, the different values. Notice how viewing these as soul curriculum changes your response. You might find yourself less reactive, more curious about what you're meant to learn. The real magic happens when you realize you're not a puppet following a predetermined script. Seth emphasizes that we're conscious co-creators who can influence how our soul plan unfolds through our choices and responses. Your soul may have chosen a family prone to anxiety, but how you respond to that anxiety, whether you perpetuate it or transform it, is entirely up to you. This is where your free will and your soul's wisdom work together. This shift in perspective completely transforms your relationships with difficult family members. Instead of trying to change them or fix them, you start focusing on your own responses and growth. You realize that everyone is following their own soul path, learning their own lessons. Your controlling mother is working on her own spiritual curriculum around trust and letting go. Your distant father is learning about emotional expression and vulnerability. Their journey isn't your responsibility, your growth is. This understanding extends far beyond family relationships. When you accept your soul's wisdom in choosing your family, you begin trusting your soul's wisdom in other areas. You start seeing your career challenges, health issues, and relationship patterns as part of your spiritual curriculum rather than random misfortune. This doesn't mean becoming passive. It means becoming incredibly empowered because you're finally working with your soul's intelligence instead of against it. One of the most beautiful aspects of this awakening is how it affects parenting. When you understand that your children are souls who chose you as their guide, everything changes. You stop seeing their challenging behaviors as reflections of your failure and start recognizing them as opportunities for mutual growth. Your anxious child might be teaching you patience while learning to trust. Your rebellious teenager might be helping you examine your own relationship with authority while developing their independence. The grieving process that accompanies this transformation is real and necessary. You're literally letting die the identity that may have sustained you for years, the identity of being wronged, misunderstood, or damaged by your family. While this victim identity caused suffering, it also provided a certain comfort and explanation for life's difficulties. Releasing it can feel like losing a part of yourself, even as you celebrate the emergence of your empowered co-creator self. This awakening ripples out into every relationship in your life. You stop seeing people as sources of your happiness or misery and start recognizing them as fellow souls on their own evolutionary journeys. The colleague who triggers you is providing opportunities to practice non-reactivity. The friend who disappoints you is helping you develop realistic expectations and self-reliance. Everyone becomes a teacher, and you become both student and teacher for others. Perhaps the most profound freedom comes from understanding that you are an eternal soul having a temporary human experience. Your current family, with all its challenges and gifts, is just one classroom in your soul's vast education. This perspective doesn't minimize the importance of your human relationships. It elevates them to their true spiritual significance while freeing you from the prison of thinking this one lifetime defines your entire existence. When you fully embrace this truth, you discover that you're not a victim of your circumstances. You're the conscious architect of your spiritual evolution, working in collaboration with other souls who love you enough to play the difficult roles in your growth story. So now that we understand how our souls deliberately chose our families as spiritual classrooms, how do we actually live with this knowledge? How do we transform Sunday dinner with your difficult mother-in-law or your brother, who still pushes every button you have, into opportunities for genuine spiritual growth? The first shift happens in how you interpret family conflicts. When your father criticizes your life choices for the 100th time, instead of automatically defending or attacking, pause and ask yourself, what is my soul trying to learn through this interaction? Maybe it's about standing in your truth without needing external validation. Maybe it's about maintaining compassion for someone whose own pain drives their criticism. Seth teaches that every family trigger is actually a spiritual assignment disguised as an annoyance. I learned this the hard way during my own family gatherings. My uncle had this talent for making cutting remarks that would send me into defensive spirals for days afterward. Once I understood that we'd chosen each other for these exact moments, I started responding differently. Instead of taking his bait, I'd silently thank him for showing me where I still needed approval from others. The dynamic shifted completely. because I wasn't feeding the old pattern anymore. But let's be crystal clear about something crucial. Understanding that someone chose to play a difficult role in your spiritual education doesn't mean you have to accept harmful behavior. Love and boundaries aren't opposites, they're partners. You can honor the soul contract while protecting your human experience. If your family member is abusive, manipulative, or toxic, your spiritual growth might actually require you to limit or end contact. Sometimes the lesson is learning to value yourself enough to walk away. Releasing resentment becomes much easier when you grasp that your parents, siblings, and extended family members agreed to take on specific roles for your soul's benefit. That mother who was emotionally unavailable, she might have been teaching you self-reliance and inner nurturing. The sibling who got all the attention, perhaps they were showing you how to find validation from within rather than from external sources. This doesn't minimize the real pain these experiences caused, but it reframes them as purposeful rather than random cruelty. Here's a practical technique for family gatherings that has transformed how I navigate these events. Before walking into any family situation, spend a few minutes connecting with the soul essence of each person you'll encounter. Visualize seeing past their personality patterns, their triggers, their defensive behaviors, straight to the loving consciousness that chose to participate in your spiritual journey. This doesn't mean you'll suddenly enjoy your argumentative cousin, but you'll interact with them from a place of spiritual understanding rather than reactive emotion. When family members don't share your spiritual perspective, you don't need to convert them or even explain your beliefs. Instead, focus on bringing more consciousness to your own responses. If your sister starts complaining about the same problems she's had for years, instead of giving advice or getting frustrated, simply listen with the awareness that she's working through her own soul curriculum at her own pace. Your job isn't to accelerate her growth, it's to maintain your own spiritual center while being genuinely present. One of the most powerful applications of this understanding involves recognizing family members as mirrors. When your teenage son's rebellion triggers intense anger in you, that anger is pointing to something unhealed within yourself. Maybe it's your own unexpressed rebellion, or your fear of losing control, or unresolved issues with authority from your own adolescence. The beauty is that your son's behavior becomes a gift, showing you exactly where your inner work needs to happen. Breaking generational patterns requires this level of conscious awareness. Instead of automatically repeating how your parents handled conflict, money, or emotional expression, you can make different choices while still honoring your family history. I watch my friends who grew up with parents who never expressed affection, learning to hug their own children, not by rejecting their upbringing, but by understanding that their parents did their best with their own soul assignments. Setting boundaries becomes an act of love rather than rejection when you understand the spiritual dynamics at play. When you tell your mother she can't criticize your parenting choices anymore, you're not punishing her. You're refusing to participate in a dynamic that no longer serves either of your soul's growth. Often, the person pushing boundaries is actually hoping someone will finally be strong enough to stop them. For parents, this perspective revolutionizes how you relate to your children. Instead of seeing them as blank slates you need to mold, you recognize them as souls who specifically chose you to help them learn what they came here to learn. Your job becomes providing guidance while respecting their own spiritual journey. That strong-willed child who challenges everything, they might be learning to trust their own inner authority. Your shy, sensitive child could be developing deep empathy and intuitive abilities. Working with their soul nature rather than against it creates entirely different family dynamics. During family crises, deaths, or major transitions, this understanding provides profound comfort and clarity. When my grandmother was dying, instead of seeing it as a tragedy, our family was able to recognize it as a completion of her soul's work with us. The way each family member responded to her death became another layer of our spiritual education about grief, love, and letting go. Here's a daily practice that has transformed my family relationships. Each morning, I set an intention to see at least one family interaction through spiritual eyes rather than personality reactions. Whether it's my spouse leaving dishes in the sink or my child having a meltdown, I look for the deeper invitation for growth. This single practice has turned ordinary family life into ongoing spiritual training. The ultimate invitation here is to see your family relationships as your personal spiritual gymnasium, where love becomes stronger than personality conflicts, where understanding transcends judgment, and where every interaction offers another opportunity to choose consciousness over reactivity. Your family members are some of your greatest spiritual teachers, whether they realize it or not. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it,"